Welcome to Spectrum Perspectives, real talk with parents, professionals, and autism advocates. With your host, Cindy Gellermini.
Hi everyone. In today's episode, you'll meet Stacy, who talks about trying to get a diagnosis for her son Louie, who turned out to have autistic behaviors, but he had Fragile X syndrome. We talk about dealing with the guilt as parents, about whether we should put our kids on meds, and trying to find the right school and therapies for them. Join me today for part one. Today, my guest is Stacy, and she's a friend of mine who's a fellow autism mom, and we're going to meet her today. And tell us, Stacy, what's your son's name?
My son's name is Louie.
And how old is he?
Louie's 24. He just turned 24, December 28th.
Oh, Robbie's birthday was just December 27th. They're like the same.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, right, to both of them.
Yeah.
So, so I'm going to just sort of run all of these the same. Let's go to the very beginning. Okay. When you were pregnant with Louie, was it a normal pregnancy? Were there any issues?
Nope. Absolutely normal. He was my second baby. So everything, was the way it should be. He did come early, but he was a completely healthy weight, 713. He was due at the end of January. But everything.
And
was
normal delivery? No issues?
Normal. Yep.
Okay. APGAR scores were good?
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
Right. So, so then I'm assuming most kids, the diagnosis comes around 2 years old. So when did we start noticing that something was a little off? Did you notice it? Did somebody else notice it first? Tell us about those.
Well, the interesting thing about Louie is Louie has a dual diagnosis. I think I've told you this. Louie has Fragile X syndrome.
Oh, okay.
So Fragile X syndrome, fast forward now, is common. Back 20 years ago, it was not. So when Louie was born, he came out perfect. Unfortunately, he did not eat. His muscle tone was non-existent.
He wouldn't drink a bottle, or you're talking about
Well,
food?
he wouldn't nurse, he wouldn't latch on, and they were, they contributed it to him being early.
Mm-hmm.
So of course we took him home, and we struggled from the time that we took him home. But when he was 3 and he was able to get
Hold on, what about his milestones? What about crawling, walking? Were those on time? Were they late?
No, all behind.
Okay.
Everything was delayed. Significantly. He crawled at, maybe closer to 2. He walked at 4. He had failure to thrive. He had hypotonia. He cried.
What is that?
Hypotonia is low muscle tone. Either you have
hypertonia, okay,
right, hyper or hypo. So Louie had no muscle tone. He had a body of a rubber band, which made it physically impossible to keep his head up, to suck, his tongue, to eat.
And what were doctors saying about it when he was little?
They were just contributing it to his delays.
He was a preemie?
Delayed, he needs to catch up. He's a boy. You know how many times I've heard that? He's a boy. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, he had no characteristics to Fragile X at all. He still doesn't. And then we had the town came
speech.
In. No speech.
I sign.
I know. I got you. So
he's 4 years old. I'm assuming no speech.
No speech. Grunted, screamed, flapped. Back and forth. Stimmed all the time. Every time he ate, he vomited.
Wow. So at 4 years old, he would typically be in preschool by then. So what was the story?
Oh, right. Exactly. So when we had the child study team come in, they were wonderful. I lived in Summit at the time.
How old was he then? How old?
He was 3. So
okay.
The child.
And how did you even know to call the child study team? How did we get to that point?
Through my pediatrician.
Okay.
So basically what they had
And what
said
was the pediatrician saying? Were they saying, oh, they were the ones saying, oh, he's a boy, he's whatever?
yes, they were saying, there was nothing they could do. You had to wait it out, because he was so little. They just wanted him to eat. They wanted him to gain weight. And I remember, you get that gut feeling. You're like, this is just not, and I have a daughter who's was a year and a half older, 2 years older than Louie. So I knew that this was just not right at all. But there was nothing you can do when your doctors are telling you to wait. We actually did take him to a geneticist, and nothing came back, because at the time they didn't test for Fragile X. Fragile X is a completely separate DNA.
He had Robbie tested for Fragile X. That's the only reason why I'm familiar, but he didn't have it. Supposedly.
Right. Yeah. So it's important to know the history of Fragile X as well, because a lot of children who are autistic actually have Fragile X, and it's a genetic condition. So unfortunately, if you, like myself, I'm a carrier, I pass it down, and each time I pass it, it gets more intense. So, so a lot of these families now, from what I understand, in the autism world and the Fragile X world, they get tested for Fragile X now when, I believe when they do a Down syndrome test or something, like that. And it's important because it's hereditary, and it just keeps going until you stop it. Knowledge is power. So anyway, the child study team came in, and they were wonderful. So we started with therapy. We started with eating therapy and physical therapy and OT therapy.
And where did you do that?
I did that through.
Did they come to your home, or did you
Yes,
go somewhere?
they came to my home in Summit, and it was only, maybe, what was it, an hour a week, but still, for me, I was young, and
Child study team is through the Board of Ed.
Correct. It's through the town.
Right.
Yep. So, and then they also said, he needs more. So we ended up going privately.
And was there any cost to you for this?
No, not through Summit at all. But going through a private therapist, it was obviously out of pocket, but it was different then. You would go to therapy. I mean, I was going to therapy when Louie was 4, PT, huge, OT, and speech. When he was little, I was doing that 2 times each one, and they would just give you a bill at the end of the month, and you would pay it, and it would go through your insurance. I mean, it was not anything like it was now. So I was very fortunate that we were able to do that, because that's really what helped him. Therapy is so helpful for our kids. So when I did send Louie to early intervention in Summit, unfortunately, they did not know what to do with him. Actually, the teacher called me and she says, I'm sorry. We walked Louie around outside, and early intervention was 2 hours a day. She said he screamed the whole time. He cried. You have to get him a diagnosis.
And where was that you were taking him for the early intervention?
In Summit.
I mean, like you were bringing him to a place, or that
was the program they had.
To your house.
Yeah. No, they had the early intervention programs through school, because he was of school age.
Because Robbie, he went to Summit Speech School for hearing impaired kids. That was his early intervention, because he had ear infections and stuff, and we thought he wasn't hearing like high pitched sounds and stuff. And it wasn't until he was going through that program that they finally, his one therapist kind of pulled me aside, and she's like, I'm not really supposed to tell you this, but this is not, if this is autism, this is not, you need to take it to a doctor.
And you know what?
Evaluated.
I love people like that, because you as a mom, something is not right, and you need that confirmation so that you can move on.
Right.
I mean, how long you probably would have stayed there until someone had the nerve to say, hey, listen, this is more than, Right. So, the teacher
was saying, she said
it wasn't working. Right. So then they gave you a list of schools, you know, in Mountainside, there was a children's
Is he labeled
hospital.
preschool handicap? Did they?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
So,
we went to the
yep.
children's specialized also.
Yep. So, you know, I think we all back in the day had this same exact, path. So,
And what were you thinking in your head was wrong? Because I know for me, I'm thinking that my kid is just, he had too many ear infections, he can't hear, and once he gets tubes in his ears, he'll hear and he'll be normal, you know?
right.
And then they bring me to Children's Specialized Hospital with
And they're
kids
like, no.
in wheelchairs and like severe
Yeah.
disabilities,
Oh,
and I was like, what the
yep.
hell? Why are you bringing me here? You know,
Yep.
I was stunned.
I know. It is a eye opener because I remember when Louie went there and you were like, what? There was kids in the hallway in wheelchairs. The smell alone made you cry as soon as you walked in the door.
Robbie ran for the door.
Oh,
He turned around and ran. I said, we're out.
you know, I don't have a very good memory anymore at 53, but let me tell you, those memories, they really do stick with you because it is a very hard sight when you're not in, you don't expect that at all. I remember that, but you know, everybody in those schools were wonderful. You know, Louie thrived. They, they just loved when he was there.
So where did he end up going?
Yeah, excuse me?
Where did he end up going then?
You know, it's funny. I was trying to remember the name of it. The school isn't there anymore, but
But it was a school for what?
It was a school for special for special needs, and it was actually I believe it was an extension of the Children's Specialized Hospital in Cranford at the time.
Okay. And he was 4 years old at the time.
Yes, he was 4, getting on a bus by himself, going off, you know, so that was also another, you know, horror as a mom, you know. So, but
and he's nonverbal, right?
So he started sign language.
Okay.
So once we started sign language with speech, he took off.
Okay.
Because he was like, now I can talk.
Yes.
Now I can, you know, he was like very happy, and that eased his anxiety. And one of the things about Fragile X is that's anxiety based. I mean, Louie was born with anxiety. So, at 5, we finally did get the Fragile X diagnosis. And then we were able to soar. I mean, it just took us into a whole different world of doctors and geneticists and clinics. And so we were able to get him as much help at the time that was needed for him. So once he started walking, that was it. He started running. Once he started talking, he didn't shut up. So, I mean, it really, once we got the diagnosis and drugs, I'm sorry. I know a lot of people don't like to hear that. It helped him. I mean, Louie didn't sleep for the first 5 years of his life.
Right.
So clonidine was our savior. It was my
I just got an inbox message yesterday from someone with a 3-year-old and said their kid isn't sleeping. What do I do? And I said he needs clonidine. We're both moms were telling you people, if your kid's not sleeping,
clonidine.
And clonidine is a blood pressure medication. And it's a very small dose, and and all it does is kind of lower their blood pressure, slows them down, makes them tired, and they go to sleep.
And they get relaxed.
It's a lifesaver.
Right.
And Robbie was on it for the rest of his life.
Yes. And you want to know what? Louie's still on the same dose that he was prescribed at 5 years old. He takes one pill
like
at night.
0.5 milligram or something.
Yep. And I will tell you now that I might be lying a little bit due to COVID. He's been home and he's been stressed. So the doctor said, you know what? If right now you want to add another pill, if he's having a tough day, to wind him down, to get him to relax.
Yes.
So that is what we're doing now. But once this pandemic is over, just, you know, back to one. Clonidine was a lifesaver. And what it also did for me is it helped me be accepting of giving him medication, because once I saw that it worked, you know, as a mom, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that to a baby. He's 5 years old, you know?
I know.
And
it's hard. I resisted the medication for a long time because I I saw the bad side of it, like kids that were like zombies. They were sleeping all the time.
Oh God,
They were
yes.
just so out of it. I was like, I'm not doing that to my son. I felt like it was selfish. I'm like, I'm
Yeah,
not going to make my kid a
yeah,
zombie to make my life easier, you know?
right. Yes, I
And for
agree
me,
with
it
that.
wasn't
Yeah.
until Robbie had his first seizure at 17 that they put him on seizure meds.
Okay.
Then all of a sudden they calmed him down and he wasn't like having these mood swings and wasn't getting violent and nasty. He was like, he was pleasant. And I was like, oh my gosh. Then I felt bad
Why
that I
wasn't
didn't
I
do it so
doing
much
this?
earlier.
Yeah,
But they
no.
tell you though that they
Yep.
play around with the meds. You have to find the perfect cocktail, they would say. And I'm like, I don't want him to be a
Yes,
guinea pig. I don't want to do that, you know?
yes.
So
Mhm. Yeah.
it,
He's on a significant cocktail of meds now, but he's 23. So
yeah.
I was with you. I'm divorced, and my ex-husband was very much an advocate. And he's, as a
How
mom,
old was he when you guys got divorced?
he was 7.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was 7. And so that
I'm
was
sorry, I cut you off. So
that's
your
okay.
ex-husband was an advocate for him for what? For meds?
So he was very much an advocate for challenging Louie. I was
Oh,
the bubble mom who said, nope, I'm going to do it. Just like you were saying, I
mhm,
can't be selfish. I can handle this.
mhm.
And his dad was like, Stacy, come on, he's got to have a better quality of life. If medication is going to help him get through school, get through just going to my mother's for Christmas
Yeah.
was a big deal. Singing happy birthday to Louis still. Like there's all these little bizarre things that are just too overwhelming for him.
Mm.
So getting him on medication was very hard for me. So his dad was really the one to kind of
Mhm.
push me along. And I hate to say it, but thank God I listened to him, because Louis done a lot better with the push of medication for
Mhm.
sure.
Mhm.
Huge
So
help.
then where did he go to school? Like after, like, did he stay in the same school? Did he move to a different school as he got older?
Yes, absolutely. So Louis went to the DLC.
Oh, that's where Robbie went.
Yeah.
Where,
So
at Hillview?
he went to the DLC. So they were opening up this beautiful new school in
Oh, the one in
Warren.
Warren. Mhm.
And so we were like, okay, I wanted to stay where we were, but his dad's like, listen, this is brand new school. It has a pool. I found that a lot of, just to kind of go off the side road with Louis, when I was in Summit, we did have a pool in our backyard. Louis could swim
Mhm.
before he could do anything. And the best thing about swimming was that he didn't know that he was even getting any physical therapy.
Mhm.
And the pool would be filled with his stuffed animals, anything that, wasn't electric, of course, but anything that would keep him in there. And he would take his toys and pound on them. And he was just working his muscles.
Mhm.
The kid would be up at, of course, 6 in the morning. We'd be in the pool, we'd be
Wow.
out of the pool, and it was very helpful. And another activity was the hippotherapy, the riding of the horses also
Oh,
helped him. It gave him ton of confidence. And he loves animals, which we
yeah.
didn't know. And we found out through riding horses. So those are the two things with the hypotonia that really, really helped Louis physically become stronger without him even knowing it.
Right.
So,
Right. Riding on the horse is good for the
yep,
balance.
and the posture
Yeah.
and concentrating. So anyway, so when we went to the DLC in Warren, it had a pool, and we were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And it had a beautiful gymnasium. And the funny thing was Louis was one of the first kids there. So at the
Do
time,
you know why they put pools in that school?
no.
Because Robbie's older than your son. That's why I
Yes.
know. When Robbie started the DLC when he was 3 years old, and when he in Chatham, and then they moved to New Providence School.
Okay.
And I don't remember how old he was, but it was a kid a little older than him. He had run away and he drowned. And
Oh,
they planted a
horrible.
tree at the school in memory of this kid. And we went. It was just the saddest thing. And it just like, it terrified me. I was like, I know that Robbie's obsessed with the water. Like, they have to learn how to swim. And then
Yes.
they used to bring the kids to the Connection in Summit, which for people from not from around here, that's like the YWCA. And they used to
Right.
go there for swimming lessons, you know, like every week. And Robbie learned how to swim there. And then they built this new school, and I think they had 2 pools in there. Aren't there 2
Yes,
pools
they
in there?
did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
Mhm.
just part of the
Yep.
curriculum now. It's just, they've got to learn
Yes.
how to swim. It's just
You
so
got to learn
important.
how to swim. And
Yeah.
let me tell you, they would call me up and they'd be like, you know, it's getting harder getting Louie out of this pool, or, you know, Louie just wants to go into the deep end and it's really hard to contain him because he had been swimming since
Yeah.
he had been 2.
Right.
So, but it is very important that they learn how to swim for sure.
And
But
you know, I
that,
used to take Robbie on Saturdays. They would have a program for special needs kids at the Connection, like not
yeah.
for school,
Mhm.
right? But it was run through the Red Cross.
Yes.
And I would watch him, and he'd jog out and turn around and he'd jog back. Then he'd jog out a little bit more, and then he'd jog back. And then he'd go back a little bit further and go back. I'm like, what
Yep.
the heck is he doing? And then
Yep.
finally my daughter caught on. She's like, Mom, that's how they taught him how to swim. They did each time he'd go a little further out, and
Little bit.
he would laugh, and he
Right?
was so
He
proud
loved
of
it.
himself. And then
Yep.
and then he'd hit the deep end, and he'd just doggy paddle all
Yep.
the way.
And they could, and it's amazing how all of a sudden they've got this confidence
Mhm.
and they know exactly what they need to do and how to do it.
Yep.
And swimming is huge.
Yeah.
It's still huge in our world. You
Yeah.
know, even the ocean, it's like, you know, it's a little tough because once we get there,
Oh yeah.
we're in, you
Oh
know.
yeah. Yeah.
So, and he loves the waves hitting him, you know, that pressure. So, yeah.
Robbie too.
So
Yeah.
he ended up going to the DLC in Warren.
So did he go all the way till 21?
Yes, he did. Yep.
Okay.
They were amazing. You know, they really, Louie actually still sees, he sees a teacher comes, well, not with COVID, of course, but
Mhm.
she comes and she takes him into the communities twice a week, or she'll take him to the farmer's market, you know, or they'll just go for a really long walk. She'll take him
Oh,
to a
wow.
park. Yeah. So
That's nice.
I,
So like, are you paying her to do that, or like?
yeah, oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's where you found your companion
but
for him, or
that's
whatever.
where-
It's a former teacher.
Yes, she's a former teacher. Yep. Hmm.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And I know you and I have something in common here. Now, your daughter works at the DLC,
Yes. And in
and so does my
Providence.
son David. So the
Yeah.
siblings have now carried on.
Yep. And you know what? It's just natural. It's just
Yeah.
natural.
Because it doesn't phase them.
No,
You know, I
doesn't.
know David, he went for training and they were telling them how they're going to kick, punch, bite, you know, do da 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 da.
It's
And,
like,
and the other people are
Yeah.
like getting all nervous, and David said, he's like laughing
Yeah.
in the back.
Like, come
because-
on, bring it on. Yeah.
Exactly. He's like, I know it
Yeah.
very well.
Yeah. Yes. And it's true. I mean, that's how, you know, any behavior, I mean, they're just, you know, once they grow up with it, it's second nature to them. You
Mhm.
know, all they want to do is help these kids, because that's what she does here. I mean, she's doing it now. I mean, I'm in her room, as you can see, you know, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but
Yeah.
you know,
They're off today because it's a snow day.
Yep. She was lucky enough to get off, and you know, she's downstairs. She made him lunch for me, and so I could do this.
Right.
And I mean,
Right.
you know,
Yeah. And my daughter Patty taught there. She taught at the school in Warren.
oh,
And
I didn't know that.
yeah. She taught there for a few years. She was a great teacher. And then
Oh, I'm sure.
she moved to North Carolina, and I'm like, Patty, you need to go down there and straighten this all out, because the teachers would work for a couple of months and they'd quit. They would all
It's too
quit.
much. Yeah, sure.
Well, because I don't know how to do it. I don't think they understand, you
No,
know. And I
right.
told the story yesterday in my last video that the teachers, as soon as the kids would have a behavior, they'd call home and tell the parents to come pick them up
Yep,
and take them home.
absolutely.
I said,
Yep.
they're not going to catch on to that. So
Yeah.
every day we just have a behavior so we can go home. you know?
Yes, we go
And then
home.
my daughter started, and the girl that was supposed to be had the worst behaviors, you know.
Uh-huh.
She did her little acting out thing, and my daughter put her in a hold right away. And she's like, yeah, that won't be happening again. And she was
Yep.
like stunned. And then she
She's
ended
like,
up being the best kid.
Yeah, of course. because now she can perform better. She can be who she needs to be. She doesn't need to always be wanting to go home. I mean,
Right.
that's what
They
they
test you, but they
sure do.
they are
And
going to test you to see what they can get away with.
yeah, and they're smarter than anybody gives them credit for. You know, I really believe that, because I used to get several calls from Louie's teachers at the time. They're like, Louie didn't like doing this. So of course he acted out. He dumped his water, you know, because, you know, Louie's got some bizarre behaviors, which I'm sure each of us,
All do.
you know, they all do in their own way. So Louie's is dumping water.
Okay.
But Louie decides to dump water on electronics and on things that are important to you, like TVs, laptops, phones. And he, of course, knows where they are. He knows how to get to them, and he knows how to get you mad. And he, you know.
Yes.
But,
isn't that amazing? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So, but they're like, I just wanted to let you know what he did, but he is not coming home. And I'm not letting him get away with that, because he knows we're going to call you so you can come get him.
Right.
So it's definitely, thank God that they did catch on to that, because it's a lot of what, unfortunately, we were used to. You know, we're always on call. We're always on call. You know, whether, you know, they have a behavior, you have to go get them, or whether, you know, they're not feeling good and you have to go get them, or, I mean, you're always on call. You're never not.
So does he have any physical stuff like seizures or GI issues or anything like that?
He does have, you know, GERD, you know, heartburn, but they're all, I really,
that's more anxiety.
Yeah, it's more the acids and the anxiety. Yeah. So Louie,
I found when we put Robbie on the seizure meds and it calmed him down, his GI issues stopped. Wow. Yeah, because it was really because of his nerves.
Yeah, you know? The nerves, I really think with these kiddos are really more prevalent than anybody really even, you know, knows. I mean, I think that and I get it. You know, they're afraid of the unknown. That's what scares them.
Yeah.
And if they're not with their safety people, then, you know, and that's usually when you do get a behavior.
So is he's fully vocal now?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure, and he understands everything that you say.
Oh, everything. Yeah. Okay. Yes, he does. Yep.
Okay. All right. Yep. So the anxiety is not necessarily, like, I felt like with Robbie, it was because he was nonverbal and he didn't really understand what you were talking about. So you couldn't explain to him, okay, we're going to go to the doctor now or whatever. Right.
Yep.
So I felt like that could cause anxiety. So if you can speak to him and you can communicate to him, it's still anxiety like any of us would have over
absolutely
sort of fear of the unknown. Like, I don't know. Yeah.
And you know what, Louie, his anxiety just runs rampant. Like, for instance, being divorced. You know, I have him one weekend, his dad has him another. Now he's 24 years old and we're still like doing the flip-flopping. So sometimes, you know, if I have a previous engagement or his dad does, like now with the snow, you know, his dad's out working, so he should be with his dad. So that's anxiety based. So he, you know, he did not have a good morning because he was expecting to see his dad, and he couldn't.
But he doesn't understand when he wakes up and sees the snow outside.
So, yep, exactly. So he didn't care that there's 18 inches of snow out there. He wants to see his dad. So things like that are still very hard. He does not understand those things. A lot of times.
So what will he do? Does he act out? Does he break things? He has a tantrum?
So he'll get very obsessive, and he'll keep, you know, asking, where's daddy? Where's daddy? Where's daddy? Daddy coming? When's daddy coming? It's snowing. And then he'll mimic me. It's snowing outside, you know? And so he'll answer his own questions in his head.
Right.
But then he wants to see his dad. So then we'll have to call his dad on the phone. And then his dad talks to him, and then he has to, you know, calm him down, and then he'll be fine. But then it'll start right back up again. So we haven't really seen a lot of major behaviors lately with the anxiety, which I contribute to his new program that he's been in since he's out of school.
Yes, that was my next question. What did he do after he graduated? That's it for part 1 of Stacy's story. Be sure to tune in next time to hear part 2, where she talks about trying to find programs for Louie after 21 and how he handled COVID. I hope you enjoyed listening and it helped you gain a new perspective. If you're interested in buying our book series, Robbie's World and His Spectrum of Adventures, the link will be in our episode description, as well as my Instagram and Facebook pages. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like more content, please be sure to hit that like button, follow us, and don't forget to leave us a great review. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to join us again on our next episode of Spectrum Perspectives.
Thank you for joining us for part 1 of today's episode. Be sure to join us again next time to hear the second half of the interview on Spectrum Perspectives.